Hello everyone and welcome to the expert live session by ParentCircle.com. With the new government starting its second term in office and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's first term in this position, the nation had been eagerly waiting for the budget 2019-2020. This new budget might have ignited several questions in all your minds, and to address them today we have with us Dr. A.V. Senthil, who will briefly explain and help parents understand the latest union budget. It is going to be an interactive session, so viewers, please feel free to ask your questions in the comments section, and our expert will be taking up these questions during the session. A little about our speaker for the day. A.V. Senthil is a doctorate in commerce from the University of Madras with specialization in managing finances and investments. He has over 25 years of investing experience in various asset classes, debt, equity, real estate, and commodities. Currently, he's heading the wealth and mentoring verticals at Metis Family Office. We welcome you, Doctor.
Thank you.
So today, we'll get on to today's agenda for the day. We'll start off with knowing a little more about the union budget, and then we shall proceed with the questions that we have got so far in our circles.
Sure.
Yes. So, sir, can you just start off by answering what is the budget and what is the union budget of India?
Thank you, Reshmi, for providing an opportunity to talk to the parents in the Parent Circles forum. What is a budget? Budget is typically a document which captures all the annual inflows and outflows of the government. And typically it is presented every year. Union budget is presented by the Finance Minister of India. Now, the top three inflows for Government of India are three things. Number one, direct taxes. So that is why a lot of parents and a lot of companies are looking for whether my tax rates are going to go down or my exemption limits will go up, is the slabs are going to change. Okay. The number one inflow for the government is taxes. The second important inflow is indirect taxes. Government has brought in something called the GST, and every year they are clocking something like 1 lakh crore every month as an income from GST. So that is the second major income. The third major income for the government as part of the inflows is the excise duty. For example, Nirmala Sitharamanji, what she said is she's going to put additional 1 rupee on on petrol and diesel. So immediately the government. Now, if you look at the outflows, there are three major outflows. The number one major outflow for government is the interest which it is paying. The second is the salaries and all the pensioners, whatever they are paying. The third thing is for the subsidies. Now, why it is very important? If you look at India as a country, our annual inflows is about 20 lakh crores. The inflows is 20 lakh crores every year. Whereas we are spending 28 lakh crores, which means 8 lakh crores we are spending extra. Where do I get that money from? So that's why all the people will look forward into budget and what way it's going to impact. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question that everyone has is why everyone gives so much importance to the budget?
Yeah, except for very few countries in the world. Example, Singapore. Most of the countries, including US, their inflows are much lower than the outflows. They spend more money than their inflows. Now, why it is very important is government has to raise funds. Wherever there's a shortfall, government has to raise these funds. How do they raise these funds? For example, a couple of years back, they came up with a concept called tax-free bonds. So all these tax-free bonds were picked up by retail investors, parents, everybody started investing in the retail bonds, tax-free bonds. They gave a coupon rate of, let's say, 8% or 9% or whatever, or 8.5%. Now, if somebody is assuming that he's at a 30% tax bracket, by investing in a tax-free bond, it is equivalent to getting something like 12% in the market. So people are looking whether I can participate in it. People try to save their savings in PPF, post office monthly income schemes, senior citizen schemes, especially the people who have retired. Now people try to do that. And there is a section 80C which gives a cap of 1,50,000 rupees. Now people want to invest more. So how do they bridge the gap between the inflows and outflows? People will say that, can I participate? Can I make some money out of it? So that's why it's very, very high. And the next one is, as part of the budget, every year they come up with tax proposals. When I say a tax proposal, what are the slab rates? What are the income tax rates? What are the various slabs under which? For example, in this budget, our finance minister has introduced something called a surcharge. As if somebody is super rich and they are making, let's say, more than 5 crores, for every 1 rupee they are making, they have to pay 42 paisa as taxes. So that's why, everyone gives a lot of importance to budget. What is in it for me?
Okay. The next one is, how does this budget impact parents?
Yes, most of the budgets impacts parents. For example, I said one of the biggest expense of government is salaries and pension, right? Now, if you look at government has stopped giving that pension some time back. What they are saying is they introduced a concept called National Pension Scheme, and they said that if you want pension, you participate from your salary savings into national pension for both central government employees and state government employees, and you manage your own finances. Because what has happened is there are companies in the US like General Motors or even countries, because the people longevity into retirement is about 25 years and 30 years. So somebody if government is going to pay the pension for them, they have to keep feeding them for another 25, 30, 35 years given the longevity. So it is a very the budgets are impacting the parents in many such ways. So one is called the National Pension Scheme. So people have to plan for their golden years. There are two important factors which affects the parents. The two important factors are, one is inflation. Now, what is inflation? Too little money chasing too many goods. So what is happening is the price of goods keeps on increasing. So inflation is going up. The second important factor is taxes. Whenever you are trying to, let's say, put the money in the fixed deposit, and then you make, let's say, 6% or 7% in the fixed deposit, government says give me tax of 10% or 20% on that. So all this, whatever is being announced in the budget, is very, very relevant for the parents, because they need to plan for the golden years.
Thank you so much, sir. So in our circles, we had got some questions before the session itself. So the first question is there any scope for individual taxpayers to claim other tax deductions apart from ATC, NPS, etc.?
The answer is yes. For example, I think the person has not mentioned about ATD, Section 80D. It's called the medical insurance.
Okay.
So today, for example, one of the main expenses for parents could be to fund the medical bill. Now today, if you look at the top 3 expenses, top 3 diseases, I don't want to mention it, everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
The bill runs for a couple of lakhs. So I think Section 80D is there. Apart from that, there is a possibility that some parents will have some special child.
Yeah.
So if somebody is going to have a special child, with autism or somebody or something like that, the government has given certain benefits. So it's not only ATC or a national pension scheme. There are other ways in which they can do it. The most important thing is also about if I'm going to buy the home for a very first time, right? The government has extended few more benefits. I think some questions have come.
Yeah.
I think we'll take it up as we move forward.
Sure, yes. So the next question is, given that the market for electric cars in India is yet to take off and there's a paucity of charging stations, is it worth buying an electric car now?
The answer is yes and no. When I say it's a yes, for example, if I'm going to buy it as a second car or a third car, and I'm going to use it only for the city use, for example, for 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers within the city, and I'm going to park it within the place, I think we may go ahead for electric car, because the government is saying that for the next 2 years or 3 years, they're going to give us a benefit on that. I would be saying a no. For example, if this is your number one car, this is your primary car, then I would say that because the technologies are growing at this point in time, not like the US, I would give it a time, for example, a couple of years before I start investing.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Would the home buyer be able to avail a full benefit of interest on home loan for rupees 3.5 lakhs at any point of time during the tenure of the loan?
Once again, the answer is a very clear answer. I would say maybe, I would say. Okay. Most of the cases, it is not possible. Okay. The reason is government has introduced a few important clauses while giving this benefit. Number one, what they're saying is the total purchase value of the home or apartment should be 45 lakhs. Point number one. Point number two, you should be the first home buyer. Correct? Now, let's assume that as a parent, both husband and wife are going to apply for a joint loan. Right? Now, there is something called what is your homeowner's equity. That means you can't ask 100% loan. Maybe you have to put something like 10% or 15% of this 45 lakhs from your side to get the loan. So, which means, and today the interest rates is about, I would say, 8.5% for a home loan. Taking into account all these things, it is very difficult that both the parents, both the husband and the wife, it's very difficult to get all the entire 3.5 lakhs. But if it's a single family, like only one person is earning and all that stuff, maybe for the first year or the second year, the person will be able to get the max benefits out of it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is about startups. So, what are the additional incentives being offered for startups?
Okay. Before that, I think we should understand what is a startup. This government has brought in a lot of good things in the budget for startups and even for those companies whose turnover is only up to 400 crores. And I'm expecting that a lot of employment can be generated through startups. So first of all, let us say, what is a startup? Startup is a company which is predominantly involved in innovation and development of either processes or procedures or services, mainly driven by technology, and they also have a patent for it. For example, let's say, like I'm coming up with an electric battery for a two-wheeler. So, which is a new product which I'm trying to come up that will be qualified as a startup, provided the turnover is less than 25 crores per annum, which means a monthly turnover of 2 crores. 2 crores. It's not necessary that the startup has to be born today. The startup could have been created 2 years back or 3 years back. It's possible, right? Now, if these kind of qualifications are there, government is extending a lot of benefits for startups. Now, I don't want to list all the 10 or 15 benefits. Let me list down top 5 benefits or whatever, which is helpful for the parents. The number one benefit that they're saying is any startup, they need money. Okay, they are saying that there's something called an MSME, medium and small medium enterprises. They say that if you're able to fill in the application and if you're able to provide all the required information, they're even saying that we'll be able to process your loan application less than 1 hour. 59 minutes is what they're saying, which I would say that is a good benefit for a startup. It could be 1 crore of rupees or whatever, they are able to give it. Point number one. Point number two, I as a parent will have, might have bought a apartment or a home or a land. I would have bought it at a very throwaway price of 1 or 2 lakhs. Now today it could be worth 50 lakhs or 1 crore. Now I want to sell that and then I want to put it in the startup. Now the moment if I sell that piece of land or an apartment which I bought for 20 lakhs is now 2 crores. If I'm going to sell it for 2 crores. Now, typically, I need to pay something called a capital gains tax. Because it's not your money, 1 lakh 80, or whatever, 1 crore 80 lakhs is not your money. You have made it as a profit, right? Now, I need to pay capital gains tax. Now, the government has come back and said, if you are going to invest that money in a startup, don't pay any taxes. Don't pay any capital gains tax for selling the home and putting it in the business. So, which means the government is very clear that they are promoting innovation. They are promoting small entrepreneurs. This is the second thing which I'm saying. The third thing is, let's say I am a 25 crore turnover company and let's assume that I make 2.5 crores as profit, 10% as profits.
Okay.
Now this government is saying that don't pay any tax on your profits.
Okay.
So first thing is, if you want to have loans, you can easily raise loans. Point number two, if you want to sell an apartment or a home and then if you want to put it in the business, they are saying that don't pay capital gains tax. The third thing that they're saying is that is, if you make, let's say, even 2.5 crores or 5 crores or 10 crores as a profit, don't pay tax because you're a startup, like, I'm allowing you to grow, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Not only this, let's say you're giving an employment to, let's say, 100 people or 200 people. Let's say. For those 100 and 200 people, if you're going to take them on rolls, there is something called an employee provident fund.
Okay.
Now, what the government comes and says is that is up to a certain limit, not a very high basic salary, up to a certain limit. What they're saying is that is government is willing to pay that employee provident fund. If you look at our pay slips, there will be something called a basic salary. There will be, on your deduction, there's something called EPF. The government is saying, let me go and put it. So, which means this one. The next thing which I really like about in this budget, right? While the finance minister has said that more than 5 crores of income for the super HNIs, you pay like surcharge and you pay 42% taxes. On the other side, if you're a company, a private limited company or a limited liability partnership or whatever, if your turnover is, let's say, 400 crores or less, okay, your maximum tax rate is only 25%, which is in line with, like, some of the developed countries. So this finance minister or, like, the India initiative is that is, like, try to start new companies, do the right things, and then, like, grow, and you will also enjoy it. This is about additional incentives being offered for startups.
Startups. Thank you so much, sir. I think that it was very detailed answer. Are there short-term plans available for children who are working and are expecting immediate investments such as housing, marriage, etc.?
Most of the parents, especially in the age group of, let's say, 45 to 55, will go through this because they would have started their career by 25 and they would have had children maybe around 27, 28. And let's talk about 20, 25 years, like, they would have been under this particular age group. And this question is a very relevant question. So at the beginning of this talk, I talked about two components, which is very important. Those two components are inflation and tax. Those are the two components, right? Obviously, there is nothing called a one size fits all or any short-term plan, like, which gives ready-made answer saying that please do this or please do that. Okay. Having said that, my answer would be like this. For example, my daughter's marriage is going to happen in, let's say, in another 2 years' time. I will not go and put the money in a bank fixed deposit because if I go and put the money in a bank fixed deposit, they may pay something like 7% interest, and I am in the highest tax bracket of 30%. So that means 7% they are paying, and then I pay, let's say, 30% tax, so I end up with only 5%. Whereas my inflation, let's say, if you talk about a marriage inflation, the cost of milk is going up, the cost of the hall, like marriage hall, is also going up. Everything is going up. My preference would be to put that money in a liquid fund. Why I prefer to put it in a liquid fund is that is they all invest in government securities. At the beginning of the budget, we said, like, there's a shortfall, right? The shortfall between whatever our annual inflows is about 20 lakh crores, our annual outflows is about 28 lakh crores. So there's a shortfall of 8 lakh crores. Government comes and gives, like, raises the money through bonds, which gives, let's say, 7.5% interest. Now, all the mutual fund houses in the form of liquid funds, like, go and participate and then buy those kind of things for medium term and short term requirements. My suggestion is that is if the time horizon for your goal is less than 2 years or 3 years, please don't look at equity market because the equity markets are volatile in nature. Please don't go for, like, even for so-called balanced funds and all that stuff because we don't know what happens. My suggestion is to go for a liquid fund, which is much better than a fixed deposit.
All right. Thank you, sir. So the same person has asked another question. What would be an investment plan for students currently pursuing their undergraduate courses who may or may not take up higher studies immediately?
Right. So there are two parts to the question. One part of the question is there is a possibility that this person will go and do a undergrad to a grad very shortly. That is one possibility. Another possibility is that that may even happen after, let's say, 6 years or 8 years. Okay. Yeah. The reason is like this, right? Let's say I've completed my undergrad in India, which is a BE or a BTech, correct? Typically, I go to US to do a master's, MS. I call it as MS. It's called a graduate program. Now, there are parents who want to send the kids to do MBA in the US. The typical average age profile of doing an MBA in the US is anywhere between 25 years to 26 years. So which means that the money is not required immediately. The money can be there for 4 or 5 years also.
Okay.
So my suggestion is, depending upon the time horizon, whether it is less than 2 years or 3 years or more than 3 years, you need to balance between the various instruments. For example, today, as we speak today, the small cap funds and the mid cap funds have corrected a lot, right? And I am thinking that with the kind of the incentives what the budget has brought in and so many things are there, I think the fund managers will be able to invest in the right small cap. In our last meeting, we talked about Britannia Industries, right? So my suggestion is if you can wait, do a systematic transfer plan over a period of 2 years or 3 years in a small and a mid cap, the probability of getting a higher alpha or a higher yield is much better.
Okay, sir. So the same person had made a comment, investments of long term seem to be good for school going kids who have considerable years of study, which I have done. Now it's a time to look for 3 priority kids, higher education, marriage, and our own income stream after these investments.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's
Good. So what should I do?
yeah.
So for example, let's talk about the last part first. Okay. For example, I'm assuming this person should be once again the same age bracket, 45 to 55 or 55. And today, with the kind of medical advancement that we have, we are talking about a lifespan of, let's say, even 90 years. When we talk about a lifespan of 90 years, we are talking about another 30-35 years into retirement. When we talk about 30-35 years into retirement, we are talking about drawing monies for a long period of time. My suggestion is any money that you don't want for the next 10 years or 15 years, kindly invest it in the equity market. In the equity market over a period of time, like an STP, like systematic transfer plan, you start doing it. But any money that you need within the less than, let's say, 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, please don't go to equity markets. That's the second thing. And the third thing is, there is something called anybody who got a VRS. Today, for example, I don't know whether you saw the papers. Yesterday, Deutsche Bank gave pink slip to 18,000 employees in Hong Kong and in the European nation countries. Now, for example, if something happened, Jet Airways lost so many employees, very recently. If they're going to get final settlement or something like that, we're going to get a VRS or whatever. My suggestion is take the money, park some of the money in the government products. For example, RBI bonds. RBI bonds gives, let's say, 7.75% taxable. It's a taxable product. For example, if I'm 55 or 57, and if, let's say, for example, I take a retirement, I will go to the post office and then I'll invest some part of it into senior citizen schemes. The reason is I get assured income from there. Correct? Similarly, LIC is also having some good products. Not all the products are good. Some products are really good. So we should choose the right products. Now, if you talk about the first 2 parts, I think I already answered it. If you talk about it, I think I already answered it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question that we have is, for a 30% income tax slab person, is there any additional savings in the new budget?
The answer is no. There is no additional new things that has been brought in. But having said that, let's assume that this person has not invested in a new property. And let us assume that he's going to buy a property closer to whatever the limits where he's already living or something like that. He will be able to optimize the tax. When I say optimize the tax, by taking a home loan, now the government has given certain benefits.
Yeah.
So we can address those things. Yeah. So no new benefits has been given, but they can use the additional things, whatever that has been given in the form of buying in first time, and he should be a first time home buyer.
All right. So we do have a question now. So healthcare was not discussed much in this budget. Could you please shed light on the healthcare budget, especially how families can be benefited?
Yeah. Unfortunately, not a lot of announcement came for healthcare. Okay. Because government has done few things in the previous budget towards healthcare. Point number 1 is Section 80D.
Yeah.
We covered that at the beginning of this one. For example, if I want to take a policy for healthcare policy for parents, they are talking about even as high as 50,000 rupees per annum as a premium. That I can write it as an expense in my income tax statement. Similarly, if I go for an annual health checkup annually, that also can be claimed as an expense. Now, only thing is, all these things cannot be paid by cash. Either the money has to be paid in the form of a check, or they have to use their credit card. So by doing this, they will be able to reduce some part of it. And the third thing is, there are few insurance companies which are giving with some innovative products. Okay. For example, we are doing this from Chennai. This interview is going live from Chennai. There is a company called Star Health. Now, it's a company. What they say is they have a separate policy for senior citizens. Now, what they say is if it's a pre-existing disease, they said we will do 50-50. Okay. So if I'm going to spend 2 lakhs, I'll give you 1 lakh for it. 1 lakh you have to do it. But if it's a new disease, they say 70-30. So all that I'm trying to say is healthcare is very, very important. That too in golden years, like we'll be spending a couple of lakhs into insurance. Better we take insurance and then we save some taxes as well.
We have one last question before the session ends. Does rise in petrol diesel prices affect increase in the other daily consumable goods?
The answer is 100%. 100% it will have an impact. For example, diesel is used to move the goods from one place to another place. Even if you take an Uber or a Ola, I think it all runs on fuel. The cost is going. It will not go up immediately. Okay, so that's why that inflation is going up. Now, how do we plan it? There are two things. One is I segregate all my expenses are as discretionary expense and non-discretionary expense. What is a non-discretionary expense? Something which I have to incur. For example, the minimum grocery bill, the minimum milk which I need to buy, the minimum transportation that I need to do it. That I cannot avoid. So my suggestion is there are times where we need to revisit our budget. It's very important that we also do a financial budget. What are our inflows and what are our outflows? And the discretionary things, for example, eating out, right? Going to a movie, right? Or splurging on other events. And now, we are talking about July, right? There are so many RD sale will be coming, so many things will be there. I think we need to revisit it and we need to plan for ourselves so that we should not be having the same thing like what India is going through. In India, we are always having a deficit budget. My suggestion is let's all become like Singapore. Singapore is always having a positive budget. That means inflows are always higher than the outflows. So definitely it will have an impact. The petrol price is going to have an impact. So we need to manage.
Thank you so much, sir. It was good having the session with you today, and thank you for taking out time to answer the questions from our viewers. I hope this session would have been really very helpful to a lot of parents and others who are also curious about the latest union budget of India, and it will help you make wise decisions, investment decisions hereafter. Viewers, if you still have any more questions, feel free to drop your questions on our circles and our expert will be answering them even after the session today. And thank you so much. Stay tuned for more such expert live sessions by subscribing to our channel. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Rashmi. Thank you for organizing.
Thank you, sir.